Let's turn to our panel. I'm joined for conversation the South African Police Union spokesperson, Lesiba Thobakgale, Professor Irvin Kynes of the University of Cape Town Centre of Criminology, and security analyst Ziyanda Steerman also joining us in the conversation. You're weighing in tonight, 072-110-5584, and we ask you the question, are police using unnecessary force in dealing with crime? Or is this use of force welcome and it ramps up your confidence in police being able to respond to the crime challenge in the country? You can weigh in tonight on that conversation. Good to have you all, and thank you very much for coming on this evening. Zen, let me start with you with that question. People I'm sure you've seen have been having this conversation. Some have welcomed the police action, saying, in fact, it's about time. It's been a long time coming. There's been, of course, that section of society that has said maybe this is a little bit suspect and a little bit too much use of force. But all in all, the conversation is around the trust deficit that is existing between communities and police, but also maybe a degree of communities saying they're fed up with their inaction. What do you find particularly acceptable about that response, or what do you find unacceptable about that response?
Good evening, Thabo, and thank you so much for having me be part of this conversation. I think that when we broadly talk about policing work, I think especially in the midst of high and violent crime rates, essentially what we're looking for the police to do is not themselves become criminals or not themselves become involved in illegal or unlawful behavior. A big part of that is the fact that their responses are regulated by law, particularly where there's the use of force and particularly where, they're either investigating crimes or they're effecting arrests. The question really is here, the way that you framed it at the top of the segment was whether they're using unnecessary force. I think the more pointed question is around excessive force. We understand that police officers go into very dangerous situations, particularly where there's a large number of suspects or where there's organized crime. And so force does become an element of the way that they need to do their policing work, whether it's a raid or a sting operation, etc. But there is such a thing as excessive force. And I think, unfortunately, what we're seeing, what we've now seen over multiple instances in KwaZulu-Natal, is really a response that goes in with the intention of essentially clearing out suspects or criminals, and not actually with an intention to effect an arrest and to therefore investigate a crime further, convict those criminals who are involved in that crime, and then sustainably be able to shut down a level or a culture of crime in any particular community. So
let's distill that a little bit more. I mean, what are you saying? You're saying the police have reached a point, maybe also they themselves are being fed up, but maybe also themselves are being worried about their own lives, that they are no longer suffering the small stuffs of investigating and processes and operations, but rather eliminating the problem and saying we're just going in and we wipe them out.
That's one way to look at it, for sure. I think another way to look at it or to think about it is also the fact that, again, training goes out the window. In many of these cases, the best police practice is, again, to have an intelligence-led operation where, you're going in, you know who you're targeting, the suspects that you want to arrest for a specific, to carry on a specific case and charge them in court and be able to put them behind bars. But a lot of that seems to have fallen to the wayside, and the solution, if you want to put it that way, then that's put at the table, is to eliminate anyone really on the scene. Because in this case, we've seen 9 suspects, being shot to death, essentially, and that, I think, is a failure of policing work, but it is also a failure of consequence management. That there are, again, we're seeing this repeated pattern in KwaZulu-Natal. There are meant to be measures in place that essentially say, this is how good policing work is done, and where that fails, there has to be consequences for that.
Lesiba, let's bring you in here. I mean, you heard that. It's either failure of policing work, failure in the area of training, or police have reached that point where they're saying, in order for us to deal with the crime situation in this country, it's no longer about investigation. It's no longer about tactical operations. It's really about just eliminating the problem completely.
Thank you, Butabo, and let's appreciate having us, and greetings to the fellow panel members. From the South African Policing Union's perspective, we don't agree with the approach that Ziyanda is bringing forth, because clearly if you are on the road, if clearly you are in operations, you will clearly understand circumstances that police themselves find themselves having to work under. And in most cases, we find that the reports will tell you that the police were trying to arrest the suspect, and the suspects themselves, because of evading, not wanting to be arrested, then they will retaliate and then shoot at the police. Now the question comes, should the police then say, okay, they are shooting at us, they must leave them? I mean, we're talking about wanted suspects who go and do horrendous crimes and terrorizing our communities. The police always have to act within the ambits of the law, which forms part of their training, because when you study the principles of law in college, you will clearly understand the provisions of Section 49 to say when is the use of minimum force under reasonable circumstances. And in most cases, police find themselves, when they are trying to arrest suspects under such, and at that time, investigations would be done. It would be clear where it is known that who are those suspects. And then in most cases, when they go for them, you find that they are clubbed together. Then they retaliate against the police because they want to evade arrest. And the police have to make sure that, firstly, they protect their own lives. Unfortunately, when it is the police who are being killed, we don't hear a lot where people are talking about the police killings. It is us as unions like ourselves who talk about police killings. But where the police themselves manage to make sure that they secure their own lives so that they can continue to protect even other citizens, then it becomes to be that no, the police have acted otherwise. That is why we are on this principle, that the police, they know the ambits of the law, that each and every incident they have to act within the ambits of the law. And what we have seen that has happened in KwaZulu-Natal, and we cannot just use a general blanket and say that the police are just wiping everything. Let's take AKA as case. No one was shot there, no one was killed. Investigations was done, and they were apprehended for other cases up until they were then arrested and presented before the court. So we are saying as Sapu that the police know that they have to act within the ambits of the law at all times. Yeah. But where their own lives are in danger, they have to make sure that they do not become dead heroes. We are tired of where we see police being killed. So if the police themselves secure their own lives, they are also wrong. They should allow to be killed. So we are clearly not agreeing with it. We are saying that the police, they know what they are doing, they investigate. And for them to go to places like that, because they are clearly intelligence-driven. They know who is where. They know what type of criminals are they going to apprehend at that specific moment. So somewhere we really need to give credit to our police, where they themselves, they are able to make sure that they protect their own lives so they can continue and have continuity of protecting the citizens of this country.
I'll come back to that and turn around and get Ziyanda to respond as well. But Prof, I want to bring you in here. What the police are raising is that the profile of the suspect that they are dealing with today, the one that refuses to be arrested, that shoots back when they're coming to be arrested, determines the kind of policing action that we are seeing. So in simple terms, one would want to say it's either, well, somebody has to die. It's either the police die or the suspected criminal dies. Is that the environment in which the police are working at now?
Well, Abu, I think we must just take that with a pinch of salt, because I understand what Lesiba is saying, that the police are under siege. And there's good reasons why the police are under siege, because the levels of violent crime has increased in the country, and there's a clamor on the part of the public for a reaction. Unfortunately, you cannot use such draconian methods to resolve the crime problem, because we are a constitutional state, and the police has to be far smarter than saying that the criminal refuses to be arrested. There are measures and standard operating procedures and regulations and national instructions that can be followed on the part of the police to arrest people. In the AKA, Lesiba is right, in the AKA murder, the suspects were violent criminals, and they were arrested. And so the police has to follow the letter of the law. The problem for the police is that there is no public trust in the police. And if you look at the Afrobarometer survey, only 26% of South Africa people that were surveyed in the Victim of Crime survey trust the police. And what that means is that the people won't go to the police to resolve the disputes. And so I think we must be very, very cautious. This is a very slippery slope where we must, the police are saying to us, we must take the police's word for it, that these are violent criminals and therefore they must be executed and eliminated. That's not how the law works in the country. The police are subject to the law. They are not the law. They are not a judge, jury, and executioner. The police has to follow the letter of the law when it comes to bringing suspects before court. And I want to say to the panel and to your viewers that we must give credit to the police officers, to those detectives that have gone beyond the bounds of normal duty to bring suspects to court, to bring them before magistrates and judges and to see convictions. And there have been sterling work done by police officers without firing a single shot. And those police officers, we ought to learn. And I want to put this challenge to Lesiba. There are detectives that are members of Pop Crew and Sapu and the trade unions that have got so much to teach other detectives that are new and are young, and even in the specialized units, the TRT and so forth. They can learn from these detectives that have got years of experience in bringing the most violent offenders to court. And I think we shouldn't, there's no compromise. The best guarantor of a stable society and order in the country is to be able to have full trust in the criminal justice system. And that means the different moving parts of the criminal justice system has to work together as a team. The prosecutors, the police in specialized units, the uniformed police, and the detectives, we have to look after one another. And you cannot say that if we provide such a lot of firepower and violence. I mean, look at it. Yeah. Look at where we're going to. With September 2023, we had 18 people killed, 18 suspects killed in Makado and Limpopo. The National Commission was present at that because of the shooting of suspects. Now, in cases like that, where suspects are opening fire on police, Section 49 covers the actions of the police. The problem for SAPS now is that most of these incidents, 15 June 2023, Mariannhill, 31st of July, 6 people killed by criminals, and then the 19th of January, 6 more killed. These are several incidents. And you have to ask the question, if you hear the reports from a journalist, most of the suspects were cornered, were under surveillance firstly. So crime intelligence has done some work here. And there's no reason why suspects stay together all the time. They have to eat, they got to buy food, they got to go out to put petrol in the vehicle, and so forth. And police can arrest individual suspects. When the group members refuse to or shoot back at the police, then of course there's legitimate opportunity. But these incidents have occurred in the middle of the night, when there are less people on the street. So look at the consequences, look at the context in which these shootouts happen. It happens in the middle of the night. The Jeppystown massacre happened during the day. Yeah. And so for me, that is an exception. Yeah. But where police officers take out cash in transit robbers in the middle of the night, I think we must ask questions. If I were IPID, I would ask the question, and this is no reflection on Yeah, surely.
Let me take a break. All right, we'll come back and argue that what transpired in the early morning was nothing but police brutality. But others are saying that this is the kind of action that they would like to see police do more and more. In fact, they're not doing nearly enough. But joining us now to look at that scenario and more on law enforcement and brutality is South African Policing Union spokesperson Lesiba Thobakgale, Professor Irvin Kynes of the University of Cape Town Center of Criminology, and security analyst Ziyanda Stearman. Let me tell you that, Ziyanda, I think that Lesiba Thobakgale and the police today have got not only the support of government. I mean, the KwaZulu-Natal MEC has come out to say this is stunning police work, brilliant police work. But many South Africans, including some rather high-profile ones and senior ones, would ask a question to you and say, how should police have responded to deadly force? They've been tipped off that they're criminals inside the house. They approach there. They are being shot at. What are they supposed to do, right? Take out Bibles, pray. What are they supposed to do? Run for their dear life. What are they actually supposed to do? Why would you condemn the police action when the same people who are condemning the police action would turn around and actually condemn those police if, for example, they ran away?
Thabo, this is such a trite conversation. I think starting from that viewpoint of, we'll excuse everything that the police are doing because they're facing armed criminals and they're being shot at. I mean, okay, then shoot everyone all the time in every single aspect. Great, let's do that. The police get over 100 billion rand a year from the South African taxpayer to do their jobs. Yes, there are many police stations that are under-resourced, that don't have enough police officers, that don't have enough, vehicles to do the work, that don't have enough, equipment, whatever it is else that they need to do their work. This is not that case. We're not talking about, some teeny tiny rural police station where there weren't enough people. Very obviously, we're talking about, again, as you just painted, a scenario in which some level of intelligence was done, some level of investigation was done. I am not saying that the police should get there and make the criminals a cup of tea. I'm saying that we should expect police officers to do their job, which is to investigate crime and then to arrest suspects. Their job is not to show up and shoot and kill everyone on the scene. If that's what we wanted, then we could give all vigilantes a uniform and we could basically turn into a country where Inkabi solve all of our problems. There are laws in place. There is a way for the police officers to do their work. And yes, as I said earlier, I'm not saying that they should get to any situation and when they're shot at, they should simply give up and roll over themselves and die. I'm saying that there is a higher duty on them as police officers, a legal duty on them to do their work in a way that is not unlawful, that is not illegal, and that does not lead to mass murder, which in this case, this is what this shooting is. So again, I'm trying to say to you that we can have this conversation and go in a merry-go-round and say the police did a great job and they absolutely wiped out everybody. Tomorrow, that could be someone else. Tomorrow, that could be an operation in which the police have set suspects up, that they've, planted evidence or whatever else it is. And are we just going to believe the police narrative in that case? I don't think so.
So let's talk about this word coming into our lexicon, and Lesiba mentioned it, dead heroes, that this is what we are now wanting the police to become by scrutinizing them so closely as they are executing policing action and responding to criminals who shoot at them first. Ziyanda?
Yes. Where's the question?
I'm saying, do you think that's what we are creating, dead heroes?
No. Again, I think that what we are doing as South Africans is expecting the police officers to do their work, again, within the ambit of the law. Lesiba said so himself, correct? So again, if they find themselves in a dangerous situation in which they have to engage in force, I completely understand that. Nothing in this situation has essentially told us that police officers had to shoot to kill every single suspect. There were 9 suspects on the scene. There were 3 firearms found, not a single suspect arrested.
So let's look at that in your work that you do. I mean, does this kind of action, police killing suspected criminals, ramp up public trust in police?
Absolutely not. It does the complete opposite. Of course, again, everybody will cheer, police officers on and say, this is what we want to see. And then it's a completely different story tomorrow when it's them or one of their relatives who is, forcefully arrested by the police. We know that thousands of people lay complaints every single year against the police for grievous bodily harm, for assault, for torture, for wrongful arrests, for all sorts of complaints of police officers doing their work incorrectly. So what I'm saying here is that there are rules in which, again, police officers, need to do their work, and where there is just a consistent deluge of police officers ignoring those rules in which they, again, have to engage with their work, that's where they're losing public trust, and they're not going to regain it, again, by shooting everyone to pieces.
Lesiba, let's bring you in there then. Talk to us about that. One, the issues that the Prof raises, a lack of operational planning, it would seem, where, yes, there was a degree of intelligence that would have been employed here that told the police there are 11 would-be suspects, gang members that would have been there. They went to the wrong door. That in itself is something that we need to look at. But there could have been better tactical planning to say, let's surveil this place for a little bit longer. One will go out, we'll arrest one. Two will go out, we'll arrest the two, as opposed to using a tactic of bombarding them all at the same time. And the question around whether or not these encounters will not lead to them being set up deliberately to actually wipe out particular individuals.
Good, Thabo. Unfortunately, when you are in operations, sometimes you plan to say this is how you would approach a specific target in order for you to effect an arrest. And unfortunately, in your planning, there is no plan that will tell you that there are so many firearms. You can be told, you can think that there are so many firearms. Maybe intelligence tells you that. But when you get there, it's a different story. The picture we are trying to paint here is that the police are expected within a split of a second to make a decision on the action that they should take. And if now what we are talking is about speculation in terms of the reports that we have received, that is why we are glad we have IPED, which is there to investigate actions of the police. And any report that comes from IPED, at least it is based on investigations that was done related to any form of police actions. But here is the picture that we want to paint here. To say, if then you are about to approach a door, there is a shot that is coming towards you as police, and as and when you are attending to that, there is no time for you to go sit and say, I assume there is so many firearms that are there. For the fact that there is firepower that comes out from whatever door that is there, it means that there is armed and dangerous suspects whom are seeking to end your life as police. Then within a split of a second, you need to make a decision on how do you approach a situation. And in these circumstances, that's why we are saying we are glad that none of the police is the one who is found to have been wounded or to have been killed. And we want to reiterate this point that all of police officers, they know that everything that they have to do, it has to be within the ambits of the law. If there happen to be any suspicion that comes from anyone or from any members of the society, that is why APED is there to go and investigate clearly if there is any foul play that is existing. But the fact remains that circumstances as they present to yourself, your plan can be other way, but you find that your plan has to change and you have to improvise to see how at the end of the day do you achieve to arrest whoever is behind that door. How do you then achieve to make sure that even you yourself and your team could go back to your parents or to your homes when you end your shift? Those are some of the realities that when we talk about, we will find that we happen to not give them attention, which are very critical to somebody who is operational, because they know that clearly when they are there, their lives are in danger or the lives of others, and everything that they have to do, it has to be within the ambits of the law. And I'm glad that Prof. Ivan highlighted also on the issues of means that police can follow in order to make sure that they secure the attendance of a suspect before the court, because that is the purpose of an arrest. The purpose of an arrest is to secure the attendance of the accused before a magistrate court. But when you are going to try to secure that attendance, you'll find that the accused does not cooperate with yourself. Instead, they are using lethal weapon or power against yourself. There is an action that you have to take as the police. If ever there's any foul play that exists, or maybe that somebody may happen to have to have allegations that it is existing, then there should be other processes that are followed. But at the end of the day, we need to hold hands together as the community or as the society together with the police, including Community Policing Forum, because all these criminal acts, they are happening within our communities. The police alone cannot be able to do this. We know that there is a trust deficit that exists between the society and the police, but we need to rebuild them. That is why, as Sapu, we believe that strengthening Community Policing Forum within our society, it will assist us on a lot of things, because they can also stand to be the eyes and ears of the police when they have to come in.
So let's talk about that, because you are arguing that we don't have to take the word of the police on it, that they acted within the law and they did all the right things. There's IPID. There are some, including Ziando, arguing that there's very little accountability on that score, even when it comes to IPID. I had one statistics that says, for example, there could be close to 300 to 400 murders that occur because of police action. And IPID is just not nearly equipped enough, they themselves say, to be able to investigate all those things, all those murders effectively. And so they end up just closing the cases, and no accountability really could be found.
From our view, Gutabo, despite the challenges that IPID have, being understaffed and some of the challenges that you have mentioned, currently IPID is a statutory body that is there to investigate the actions of the police. And we don't believe, as Sapu, that where there is any action that is found to be wanting, that IPID would not give it attention. That is why we are saying, as they are a statutory body, they are the ones that would act accordingly in relation to any action of the police. But what matters most is to make sure that the lives of the police are not in danger, or they don't lose their lives when they are faced with such circumstances, and to make sure that they protect the citizens as well as they are empowered so by the law. But we need to hold hands together to fight crime instead of pointing each other with fingers, because the enemy here is criminality and its criminals. That we need to make sure that everything is placed under control at the end of the day.
Prof, are the police then, able to then infiltrate these gang networks? I mean, you come in, I suppose you also kill some of the suspects that could certainly give you enough information to understand how these gangs are formed, and critical information that would come out in the courts. But by killing them, are we then also killing the gang networks?
No, we're not. Thabo, let me just say this. In 1996, a vigilante organization in Cape Town, stated aim was to kill gang leaders and drug dealers in Cape Town called Thobakgale. By 1998, 30 of the senior gang leaders were executed. What the effect of that, or the impact of that killings were over the 2 or 3 year period when there was a war on the Cape Flats, was that smaller gangs emerged and new, younger gang leaders took over. The criminal enterprise does not die with the individuals. You have to go to the source of it in order to deal with some of the effects of the criminality. And yes, it's plausible that the police could be under attack, and yes, sometimes they do. But here's the question that I think if I were IPID, I would be asking, in all of these investigations where police kill all the suspects, as Ziando has indicated, particularly in the Mariannhill and KwaZulu-Natal area, is it the same members of the police that are involved in the shootings? That is an important question. I would look at those individual officers. They may not implement a manifestly illegal order in terms of the legislation. If there were a private prosecution and you have a smart lawyer that goes about proper investigations into the role of the police, some police officers plausibly could be in trouble. In Brazil, police officers decided to take shortcuts in the favelas in particular and started to kill some of the gang members while being police officers. That approach hasn't worked in Brazil. It hasn't worked in El Salvador, and the police officers were held accountable. And I think that's something that one has to follow up and look at, because you cannot have police leaders encouraging police officers to commit manifestly illegal deeds. In this case, where it's a legitimate case of self-defense, then you can hold it up and say it was self-defense, but that you have to prove in a court of law. And I want to make sure that the police officers that are behind the trigger understand what the orders are, and that the police commanders who's given those particular orders also know that they're instructing their rank and file members to follow the letter of the law. You cannot ask the question, if I were IPID, in all these killings, were they similar, were the members of the teams that committed these killings the same people? Then I think we have a huge problem, because then you can say we're executing the death penalty by other means and we're using the police to do that. There's no way that we can accept that in a democracy. We have to strengthen our democracy by bringing suspects to court, not by executing them. Where it's legitimately proved, as some people claim in this case, that the suspects were shooting at the police. And again, good lawyers will ask questions. In the middle of the night, police approach houses, they go to the wrong house. In other cases, they go to the correct house, and suspects open fire. Opportunities for police to respond is there, and they certainly will. But if that is one case, if you put a number of these cases together, then patterns emerge, particularly in Mariannhill. And you have to ask, what is going on with the policing in Mariannhill? Thank you.
Ziyanda, your book, of course, you talk on safety and security. That's really the focus of it. And, of course, it involves other issues, police corruption, police accountability, and so on and so forth. But at the heart of it, you're saying there needs to be an overhaul of the criminal justice system. How do we reach there?
In the 3 minutes we have left on this panel. Look, it's going to take a lot, particularly, I think, from the side of there being sufficient political will to actually see this as a moment in time where there is a genuine policing crisis, and that there has to be a fix for it, not just, sort of once-off solutions or more guns, more bullets, more boots on the ground, et cetera, et cetera. We really need to rethink what it is that we have in our criminal justice system and what it is we want to achieve through public safety initiatives. So these really run the gamut from being able to recruit police officers with various types of skills, so that we're not just training police officers to shoot at any particular target and not ask questions or ask questions later. We need a really robust, functional detective system that can lead crime intelligence work, and that can do so operationally, tactically, across different provinces and even across our borders. And we also need real political leadership in terms of policing, not the type of leadership I think that we see at the moment, where you have many different police ministers. We've had a cycle of police ministers who sort of treat the job as an opportunity to do photo ops or publicity stunts. But we need police leadership, both politically and also within the service itself, that are deeply invested in the operational and the policy work that goes into policing. And a big part of that is to actually strengthen IPID. I think that often what I talk about is the fact that this version of the police service that we have fails police officers just as much as it fails ordinary citizens. Police officers want to be able to know that their colleagues who are doing misdeeds, who are looking the other way, who are taking bribes, are actually going to have consequences and actions against them for doing so. Once we can get at least those pieces correct within the value chain of policing and the greater criminal justice system, then I think we can really, talk about a justice system that delivers justice and not just says that it does.
Senator Steelman, appreciate your time. We lost Lesiba there in that connection. Lesiba Thobakgale for the South African Policing Union, as well as Professor Irvin Kynes of the University of Cape Town.